Very formal good afternoon to everybody and welcome to the new learning series from Juno School of Business. As you see, today we're talking about the topic which is busting sales myths, right? So I'm sure you would have registered. That's when you would have seen that this is the topic that we would be talking about today. Okay, so this is about me. So very awkward to introduce your own self, but still I will not take much time, but I would do it because that's a ritual that we need to follow. And what I handle is the content design and the delivery piece at Juno. So if I talk about my experience, I've been in sales training typically for almost about 14 years now, training across different salespeople across industries and at various levels, right? From a frontline level to a regional head or a zonal head, or it may be a AVP or a VP also. So if I talk about my certifications and training, I'm a certified trainer from City and Guild, UK. Fortunately, won the 101 most fabulous global training and development leaders in the year 2019. If I talk about a few organizations that I've worked in the past in my training space, right, starting from G Capital, then I moved to Intelli, TCS, NI Sparta, Jaguar. I was part of IM Jobs also. And of course, my last stint was with HT Media. So that's a quick brief about me. Would not be taking much long on this, and I will quickly jump to the objective. Now, before I kickstart the session, I'm sure all of you know about Juno School by now. People who've been attending our sessions regularly, and I see a couple of people who joined us for the first time. So if we talk about sales, sales is a career that, is something that people normally don't want to get into. But yes, it is one of the careers which is very rewarding in terms of the growth that you can see. And sales is typically something that we all do in our life, be it in our personal life, right, from cracking an interview or, clearing a group discussion. And in the corporate world also, if you see, when you talk about appraisals or you negotiating a salary during a new hire, it's all about how you negotiate and how you sell yourself. In the personal space also, we're selling ideas to our friends and family all the time. Since sales is one of the very important skills that every individual should possess, the irony is that it is not taught in any school or college. And that's the irony. So we thought, why don't we create a platform wherein we sharpen the skills which are involved in selling really well and selling better. And that's how we created this platform. So if I talk about what we offer, so we offer a 2-month course, which is stretched over technically 8 weeks, mixed blended with a lot of different training methodologies, right? From these sessions that we do to instructor-led trainings, to give you assignments, field jobs, then you come back into the training room, share your experiences, then we do role plays. So the entire idea is to sharpen the selling skills of every individual who wants to get into the profession of sales. That's one bit. And the second bit, which is more important for any individual, right? It's important for everyone, for that matter, is to get a good, platform to start our careers or maybe get a great job jump. So we offer placement support wherein we will guide you parallelly. So we train you and we guide you parallelly. How do you crack those sales interviews? How do you create a great LinkedIn profile? So we have industry experts who will guide you to build a great resume. So that's the kind of initiative that we thought we will take at Juno. And that's about Juno School in brief. Coming straight to the topic. So today's session objectives, very clear as the name says that, there are a lot of sales myths which are operating in the marketplace. And unfortunately, we all have heard this time and over again, and it's somehow got conditioned in our minds. So we really don't know whether those are actually myths or realities. So in this session, we will try to understand a couple of things that people have around sales. Now, that could be a myth or a reality. So we would brainstorm that in today's session. And then we will introspect and discuss that what are the realities of modern day selling. So as the market has evolved, customers have evolved. Same, the way we sell has also evolved. So modern day selling, what is it all about? What does it include? And what are the things that we should be keeping in mind when we sell in this modern era? Of course, we'll talk about certain selling concepts, though time is a constraint, but yes, we would touch base on certain selling concepts that we can use in our practical job profiles or in the practical field, and then see how it can add value. And we would talk about what is the importance of sales process. So that's the objective by and large for today's session. So first, what we start is with by uncoding the mirages. And I'm sure everybody knows what is a mirage, right? Can somebody quickly tell me what is a mirage? Anybody? Nobody would want to take a shot there. Okay, so mirages are typically seen in deserts, wherein from a distance when you see it appears to be an oasis, a water body, but when you rush there, you see it's again barren sand. So what you see and what the reality is different. So the objective here is that we will try to uncode these messages, that what we've heard from primitive times, what we've seen, is it really true? Does it actually exist? Or is it something that we are in a make-believe situation, right? So that is what we will start doing. And that's how we will bust the myths and the realities. Now, before we start this, I would want you to buckle up. Now, how do I want you to buckle up is pretty simple. Take a notepad and pen and write down numbers 1 to 10, because I would be sharing 10 statements with you. And I want you to take a blank sheet of paper and number it from 1 to 10. And as and when I show you a statement, I want you to mention whether it's a myth or a reality, backed up with the reason as to why do you say it's a myth or a reality. So today's session is not going to be an information download, which quite a few of our sessions have been. Today's session is going to be very interactive, wherein I'll show you one statement. I will give you about 30 seconds of time for each statement. And I will tell you to write down whether it's a myth or reality as per you. And of course, with the reason why, right? So take a notepad and pen, number it from 1 to 10. Are you guys ready? At least give me an acknowledgement so that I know that you guys are ready to start this journey.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So let me open the first statement for you. The first statement that I say is, the more you speak during a sales call, the easier it is for you to convince the customer to buy your product. Now, this is a statement. I don't know whether it's a myth or a reality. I'm giving you 30 seconds by the watch, and then I want you to tell me whether it's a myth or a reality, and then we will discuss and brainstorm why it is a myth or why is it a reality. So I repeat the statement. The more you speak during a sales call, the easier it is for you to convince customers to buy your product. Okay, so I've got 2 responses on the chat box. I've got another one. So the majority of the population says it's a myth. Now, is there anyone who says, no, it's not a myth, it's a reality? Because a salesperson is the one who's supposed to be talking more. And the more you speak, it gets easier for you to convince the customer. So guys, I can see a lot of people typing on the chat box, but if you can speak, I think that would be fantastic. So why don't you unmute yourself and tell me, if you said it's a myth, why is it a myth? And if somebody wants to debate and say, no, it's a reality, I would want to take that front as well. Anyone?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Himadri. Once again, Ahmed here.
Yeah, Ahmed, please tell me.
Yeah, according to me also, it's a myth, because while speaking is very good for a salesperson, he should be extrovert, no doubt onto that. But the speaking should be based on facts and technical specifications. And
Correct.
instead of more than a speaker, a salesperson should be a good listener to what going on in the mind of a buyer, actually, basically.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else wants to add to something what Emma just mentioned?
Yeah, hi Himadri, I'm Sarita here.
Yes, Sarita.
So as per me, it is a myth, because a salesperson should first understand the client or the customer.
Okay.
So to understand the mindset, it is important whether this particular product for which the salesperson has gone to the customer or is meeting the customer or the client, whether it is a need or it can get evolved into a need tomorrow. So till the time you do not understand the customer, you cannot pitch up product or a solution, whatever it may be. So
Great.
it is a myth, and it helps to create an understanding for a salesperson when he gets the opportunity to talk.
Okay.
The way you are doing right now, so you're trying to understand what I'm trying to say. So right, and in a way you are selling. I mean, when you're doing this session, it's a selling. So
Correct.
but you're in a listening mode. You want us to talk,
Right.
because we are your client. So similarly, when you go to a customer or a client, it's good to be not
Okay.
proactive, but pro listening active. You should be.
Great. I think that's a good insight, Sarita, that you've shared. So typically, if I talk about the first statement, it is absolutely a myth, and all of you are right. So as you guys mentioned, so let me add some pointers here. So you guys have already mentioned that a salesperson or a good sales consultant should be a great listener. And I think you guys have mentioned as to why, because till the time you don't listen, you can't understand customers' needs and requirements. There's another thing that I want to add is you must have heard about the 80-20 rule, So that's something that we talk about in forecasting and a lot of other things. But there's an 80-20 rule that you can follow when you are going and meeting your customers. 80% of the time you should be listening, and only 20% is the time when you should be speaking. So a good sales consultant is the one who asks intelligent questions. I repeat, who will ask intelligent questions to make the customer speak more, to make the customer talk and share what he exactly wants. And that's what a great sales guy is all about. And the best of the salespeople will always encourage the customer to speak. So get into that habit of speaking less. Just keep the 80-20 rule in mind. 80% is the time when you should be making the customer speak, and 20% is the time when you should be speaking. Right? So can we quickly move to the second statement? So this statement is a myth. The second statement says, okay, now this is really interesting. A person who can sell a fridge to an Eskimo is the one who has mastered the art of selling. Now, this is out of sophistication, but yes, there is one statement जो हम सबने सुना होगा, जो गंजे को कंगी बेचते वो बहुत अच्छा sales वाला. And I think, be in the profession of sales or not sales, you've always heard this statement. So my question to you is, do you think this is a myth or it's a reality? So with sophistication, you can always say a person who can sell a fridge to an Eskimo is the one who's mastered the art of selling. So what does the forum tell me? Is this a myth or is it a reality? And of course, with the reason, why do you say so? So I have a response on the chat box. In fact, I have two. So I have two people saying that it's a myth. Rohan says it's a myth. Vivek says it's a myth. Sarita says it's a reality. Great. So we have two differences of opinion. So we can have a healthy debate around this. Others, would you want to share your response, whether it's a myth or reality? Because I'm sure everybody would have a response. It's a statement and I've given you two simple choices. So you can pick one. Either it's a myth or a reality. So I would expect people to give me more responses. Okay, so I've got 3 myths, 2 realities. Okay. Okay, so people who say it's a reality. Okay, so I've got 2 people say, 3 people say it's a reality. Why do you feel it's a reality? Let's understand that first, and then we'll go to the majority who's saying that it's a myth.
Hi.
Bismoy. Yeah, Bismoy, tell me.
Okay, so for me, like from my understanding, like a person who is like selling a fridge to a Eskimo, like he might have done he or she might have done a lot of hard work. Like it is not easy to like sell something that is means it is there, and you cannot sell something that is everybody knows that Eskimo already is like a frozen thing, and
correct.
Selling a fridge to that like a frozen place or frozen someone is like very difficult task. So it's
Correct.
like they have mastered. Maybe it's not easy for like a layman to just go there and sell a fridge to Eskimo. So they
Right.
would have mastered it like for a long time. Then only they will be able to successfully like sell a fridge to Eskimo. So I'm more thinking about the effort part. So might be by putting in a lot of effort when they sell a fridge to Eskimo, means they have mastered the art, and they can now maybe sell anything like to anybody. So that is my take.
Okay, so Bismarck, let me comprehend this and try to make it simple for the forum. So what you're saying is that you're appreciating the effort that and the preparation that the salesperson has done, that he's taking up the challenge to sell a fridge to an Eskimo. So basically what you're trying to appreciate here is the sales attitude. Correct me if I've comprehended this the way you actually wanted to say it.
Yes, the sell attitude and the effort,
The effort and the attitude. Great. Yes. Fantastic. Anybody else wants to add and say why is this a reality, or else I will move to the next bucket, which are people who are saying it's a myth.
Mr. Neogi,
yeah,
come on,
yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. See, we call that as art of selling. So we make the customer to either they want or don't want, but we'll create a demand. So they should have it, and then we'll make them to buy it.
Okay.
So it comes under the art of selling.
Okay, so you're saying that this comes under the art of selling. And why do you think an Eskimo would buy a fridge? Just because of the way you present it, or what it would be like?
No, it is all about how you portray the product. Say, for example, in their location, might be the temperature would be different. So to keep the constant temperature, you can tell them that you can use a fridge to maintain this in a constant temperature.
Correct. Great. Fantastic. I really appreciate that, out of the box thinking there. And yes, it may be true, but I am not giving a verdict out here. And neither am I anyone to give a verdict. It's just that we need to bust what is a myth and what is a reality. So let me go to the second section of the audience. I have majority of the people saying that it's a myth. So I've heard from people who are saying it's a reality. Let me go to people who've said it's a myth. So can you tell me, why do you say that it's a myth? Because there's some people who are saying it's a reality.
Hi, Himadri.
Hi. Hi, Rohan.
I think this is a myth because it sounds as if selling anything to anybody. So similar to this, so that's why.
Okay, fantastic. Anybody else wants to back up there? For example, Ahmed said it's a myth. Vivek said it's a myth. Rahul said it's a myth. Anybody else wants to say it's a myth and they want to share their reasons?
Yeah, Mr. Himadri, selling is either we are selling a product or a service.
Correct.
So, selling to the right person, right thing is much more important.
Absolutely.
If there is no need, and if we are going to how much pitch we do, how much we tell it, he will not buy.
Correct.
So identify correct customer for your whatever the product or service is very important.
Fantastic. Anybody else wants to add? And sorry, Ahmed, did I cut you short? Were you saying something?
No, yeah.
Great. So anybody else wants to add as to why they say it's a myth, apart from what Ahmed just mentioned?
Sir, because in this, the salesperson is only doing what is in his or own interest. He is not thinking about what is the interest of the person who is actually buying that.
Fantastic. Thanks for adding that, Vivek. So this is actually a myth. Why? Let's understand. Now, when you talk about, I am not taking the fact away that a lot of people appreciated and spoke about the attitude that a salesperson displays. Yes, when we talk about selling, there is a right mental attitude that every salesperson should have, which is like that go-getter attitude and never say never that attitude. However, when you look at it, things in the practical scope, it's really different. This is one. In fact, this is one of the most common and dangerous myths prevalent in the sales industry. Selling fridge to an Eskimo or ganje ko kangi bechna. We have heard this from primitive times, and a lot of influence comes from all these Bollywood movies around sales that, you have a sales guy, he's swankily dressed, he goes, ek do dialogue bolta, and he makes the sale and he sells anything to everyone. But in real life, trust me, it doesn't happen that way. Because the way selling has evolved, our customers have evolved. The market has evolved. And trust me, today's customer may be knowing more than you about your product because everything is available on Google. You put down two products or two different brands or maybe two different models of the same brand and you get everything there. So customer exactly knows that what he can buy or should consider buying, rather than he will just go and buy anything and everything depending on if there is a hard sell by the sales guy. Now, hard sell used to work in primitive times. And that's when people said a great sales guy is someone who can sell anything to anyone. So it's one of the most common and the dangerous myths. So we need to be, away from this myth, and we need to go and understand with an open mind, what does the customer want as a solution? And what is the product, or what are the different categories of products that I have in my portfolio that could be a potential solution for this guy? So pushy sales, these are primitive, rather historic ways of selling, and they will not just work in today's scenario as customers are more evolved, right? And today's selling is all about the need understanding. Understand the customer's needs and what are the challenges that they are facing. Because people today don't buy products, they buy solutions. So theoretically, it is very easy to say people buy solutions and they don't buy products. But how do you sell a solution? You can only sell a solution once you go there as a consultant and you understand the pain points. So the pain points, understanding the pain points and giving a solution has to be really practical. It cannot be fabricated. So one thing you need to remember, pushy sales will just not work. You got to pitch what your customer wants, and that's of paramount importance. Okay.
Mr. Himadri, can I stop you right?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, because I'm briefly speaking about my background is from operations, so I'm just now moved into sales. Now, my question is, in B2B sales, it's very difficult to identify what are the pain points of the customer because they are not ready to tell.
Correct.
So how to identify it actually, that pain points?
Correct. So Ahmed, I think that's a very important and a very practical question. And that is where the concept of pre-sales preparation, typically in a B2B space, what happens before you go and approach the business, you have to do a lot of preparation. Preparation in terms of understanding that the market that the business operates out of, what are their products? What are the competitors in that space? What could be the probable challenges that this business can have? So at times it is very important to maybe create a case study of a client in the similar space. And then how did you manage to offer solutions and then thereby maybe have reduced cost or made things much more efficient, made the organization or the people more productive? So pre-sales preparation will actually help you answer this particular question or help you combat this particular situation. Was I able to answer your question, Ahmed?
Yeah, got it, sir. Yeah, got
Okay,
it.
thank you so much. So let's quickly move to the next statement. Okay, most of the customers know what they exactly want, and the only thing the salesperson does is helps in facilitating the sale. Now, how many of you say it's a myth and how many of you say it's a reality, and why? So we are saying customers know what they want to buy. The only thing the salesperson will do is just enable the sale. So I know what I want to buy. I go to the store, or maybe I approach the organization, or somebody from the sales team comes to me and I just say, okay, tell me what next needs to be done, and I want to buy your product. So Ahmed says it's a reality. So sales guy is one who's just facilitating the sale. Vivek says it's a myth. Any other responses that I have for this statement? Okay, I've got a response from Sarita. She says it's a reality. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? Rahul says it's a myth. Pavneet says it's a myth. Anybody would want to back up their responses with a reason or logical reasonings that you have in mind? Anybody? Why do you say it's a myth? I have more responses on myths, so let me go to that population first. Why do you say it's a myth? Guys, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, supporting reality is, as you have said earlier in the previous slide, like customers are more aware presence and all the technical specifications, everything coming out on the whatever the company is selling in their websites, and competitors also. We have seen in automobiles sector wherein one automobile manufacturer has compared his specifications with other one also
Correct.
and
Yes.
shown as. So
Yeah.
in that, I believe like there is no formal education required to know the technical specifications in today's scenario. So that is the
Fantastic.
reason this is a reality.
Okay. So Ahmed says it's a reality, and he's brought in a very logical point that, the customer can see the specifications and he can compare, and he exactly knows what is the best for him. Okay. I've got a long chat here. Let me read this out. So Pavneet says sometimes the customer wants things because the other person is happy. Fantastic. Without realizing the specification. Salesperson assists them. Great. So basically a salesperson is not just facilitating the sale, but he's assisting the customer in the entire buying experience. So typically what I'm made to understand here that she's trying to say that it's a myth. Anybody else? So I have a lot of other people who mentioned myth. So why do you say it's a myth?
Yeah, for me, it's a myth because suppose a customer is going to buy a car, so from automobile, so he is ready to buy a car, but he might be having some preconceived notion based on his idea, based on his interaction with a family member or like relatives or friends, but and also by viewing a different website. But until and unless the customer goes to the showroom and try the car himself herself, he is not able to understand like what is the which car he likes most. So that is where the salesperson will come in, pitch in, and show the different benefits. So maybe he might not be aware of the different benefits like the car will have, and also the different different automobile can provide different other benefits like the servicing part and all. So that once only a salesperson can able to guide the person and also can show the benefit. So
absolutely fantastic.
Benefit, I think a salesperson is needed.
Absolutely great. So I think, Bismoy, what you've added is something which is very substantial and which is very practical. People think that they know what the entire product is all about, what are the features, but when they actually go and see, that's where the salesperson's expertise comes in educating the customer. A great salesperson or a great sales consultant will just not facilitate the sale. Facilitation of the sale means that the customer comes, he says, I want to buy this, and he tells you the procedure, whether you pay by card, check, whatever, and he does the formalities. That is what I mean by facilitating a sale. But what a great sales consultant does is, I always respect what the customer wants to buy. But I'm going to use two words here, moral responsibility. A great sales consultant's moral responsibility is to respect what the customer wants to buy, but also understand through probing what his actual requirement is, and then suggest. Of course, the final buying decision is with the client, of course, but the moral responsibility of a great sales consultant is to guide the customer well, tell him, okay, I feel this is going to be the best for you, and that's what I suggest. But still, you tell me what you want to buy or what is the solution that you're looking for. And that's when the customer, starts respecting you. That's how you build credibility, because you're an expert in that domain. A lot of people gave me examples from the automobile background, and that's one of my favorite topics because I've come with an automobile background. So let me tell you something which will help you see this entire discussion. There was a time, and I'm sure all of you would agree, that people would just go and buy diesel cars. And I think it's very true to today's scenario also. You ask a customer, because of the prices, everybody wants to buy a diesel car. And there was a time, almost about 7-8 years back, sorry, that there was a dearth of diesel cars because everybody wanted diesel cars and the petrol cars were just not selling. Now, my question to all of you in the forum is, do you think a diesel car is applicable for every buyer, or anyone and everyone should buy a diesel car? Or is there some science around it? Okay, so let me just quickly move forward. The science is that anyone who has a driving about 80 to 90 kilometers per day should look at buying a diesel car. Anyone whose driving is less than 70 or 80 kilometers per day should be okay with a petrol car. And the logic here works is, if you look at any variant of any diesel car versus a petrol car, it will cost you 1 lakh more, right? So if you're spending initially 1 lakh, I'm not calling it an investment, I'm calling it a spend. Why? Because if your driving is not that much of kilometers, you actually spend 1 lakh rupees just at the initial go. So it's not an investment, because that 1 lakh would have helped you fuel your car for so many months or years, depending on the kilometers that you drive. So it's a waste of money. It's not an investment. But if you drive more than 80 to 90 kilometers, when you do an absolute calculation, that's when you realize that buying a diesel car would be an investment. And more so, we all know when your engine opens up, be it a petrol or a diesel, the diesel cost of engine overhauling is much higher. So a person staying in a place which is just about 20 minutes, 20 kilometers from office up and down, doesn't make sense for him to buy a diesel car. But what happens, because I see everybody flocking around diesel cars, there's a mentality called herd buying mentality. Because people are buying it, I will also buy it, and I feel that it's going to be the best for me. I may walk into the showroom thinking of buying a diesel car, but when the sales consultant educates me, probes me to understand what's my driving, and then he suggests a petrol car, it will make a lot of sense to me as a logical person. And that's when I will start respecting the sales guy. I will have, he's already built credibility. I start respecting him more. I start trusting him more. And that's when I will probably recommend the salesperson to a lot of my friends and family. And that's how you build lifetime value customers. That's how you build that brand, the brand of you, your individual brand in the market. And that's how you get references. Because today's world is not about just making a 1 point sale. It's about making a sale and getting more from that customer again and again. In the chat box, I put in a model here. So these are techniques and tools that we talk about in our course. So there is a concept called SAVE, which is solution access value education. This is the evolved version of the 4P, which was product, place, price, promotion. So today's thing is not about promotion, it's about education. And who is the best guy to educate is the salesperson. So whenever I meet a customer, I am not just facilitating the sale. It's a myth. It's an opportunity for me to educate, tell him what the market realities are, tell him what the product realities are, and make him understand that as per his specific requirements, this is the best product. And that is what solutioning is all about, right? Can we quickly move to the next statement? Okay, great. I think everybody would get this, right? It's a pretty simple statement. As long as you can sell, it's fine if you do not have in-depth product knowledge. So what do you feel? Is this a myth or a reality? Fantastic. Bisma says myth. Okay. I'm sure everybody would get this as a myth because we all know the importance of product knowledge. In fact, it has become even more important for me to master competitor product knowledge in today's world, because whenever the customer comes to you, he walks in, he would always tend to compare your product and the competitor product that he's already seen or the place that he's already visited, right? And he will always ask you to do an apple to apple comparison and tell him why is your product or solution better. And that's the reason not only information or knowledge about your own product is important. What is paramount is having your product information and the competitor product. So everybody says myth. So we will quickly move to the next statement. Okay. Now this can be tricky. So before you tell me whether it's a myth or a reality, read the statement carefully, okay? A great salesperson is the one who exactly gets to know what a customer wants in the first 2 to 5 minutes of interaction with them. I repeat, a great salesperson is the one who exactly gets to know what a customer wants in the first 2 to 5 minutes of interaction with them. Now, do you think this is a myth or a reality? Responses, people. Okay, I've got 1, I've got 2, 3. Okay. Myth. Okay. Raja says reality. Anybody else? Anybody else who wants to say that it's a reality? Any other response, please? Okay, so I have two people say it's a reality. So Sarita says it's a reality. Raja says it's a reality. So can you guys share why do you feel it's a reality? Guys, are you there?
Yeah, so I am saying it's a reality because way right now you have said that a person who comes to an automobile, dealer, he knows that he has to buy a car, right? And even the person who is the salesperson, he knows that if somebody is stepping in, he has stepped in to buy a car. Now, whether how to nail it down. So it's a 2 to 5 minutes conversation. What is the kind of questions which is being made? So the right kind of probing will help the salesperson understand whether this person will buy or not. It could be from same store, same vehicle or somewhere else. But I feel that initial 3 to 4 minutes is more than enough for a person to understand whether this person is a serious buyer or not.
Great. Okay. Anybody else wants to second this thought that they feel that it's a reality? Okay. People who say that it's a myth. Why do you feel it's a myth? Any one of you can tell me the reason, and then we'll quickly discuss and move to the next statement. Yeah.
If I have to add, so today people are much advanced, and getting to know what the customer needs in the first 2 to 5 minutes of interaction is not a very big thing. We all talk, and in the first 5 minutes we have a certain idea what the other person wants, right? And then we can showcase their need and get the product sold. But what today is important to let the consumer know that they are more aware, they are actually making their choices. So getting to know what the consumer wants in the first 5 minutes, after that comes the part of telling them about various choices, what is more close to their need. That part is what I feel makes a salesperson more great, where they do not sell the product directly, but they make the consumer feel that they are making their decision on the basis of all the options available.
So Kshitij, if I may ask you, so you saying that it's a myth, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is actually a myth. Now, let me help you understand why. If you technically look at 2 to 5 minutes of a conversation, it's barely a time. And why I have specifically put this statement, because I'm sure a lot of you would agree, as and when we have more experience in sales, there are a lot of people who, especially the salespeople who are experienced, they take a lot of pride in saying, I can look at the customer and tell you what he will buy. Right? So they flaunt this by saying that, I can just have a look. That's the kind of experience I have. I will look at the customer and I'll tell you exactly what he'll buy. Now, this is really scary, because what you're doing is you're working all around the perceptions that you built. Though I'm not discounting the experience here. With experience, you tend to understand a lot of things. When you speak to customers, you process the information much better compared to a person who does not have so much of experience. But this statement, typically, if I see, it is all around your perception. And in sales, perceptions may not work. I may walk into a store, a mobile store, and I may look to be a really well-to-do person. So if I'm working on perceptions, I might want to pitch him the latest iPhone. But how would you get to know whether he's buying the phone for himself, or maybe his mate, or maybe his driver, or maybe his service help? You really don't know. So what is important is that you speak to the customers, and nowhere 2 to 5 minutes is a very short span of time to judge, even when you're probing that what the customer will buy or what is his best requirement. He may land up telling you that what he needs to buy, but you need to figure this out well by probing. And once you understand, that's when you should pitch a solution. rather than coming through perceptions or forming a perception and straight off pitching that solution. And that's precisely the reason we're saying that this is a myth. Okay, this is interesting. Selling is an art. So do you think it's a myth or a reality? Selling is an art. Okay, I have 2 responses. Let me see. Okay, so a lot of people say reality. Okay, somebody says myth. Okay, so since you guys are responding, why don't you just tell me the reasons as to why you're saying so, rather than, me individually asking or asking people to pitch. So if you put in a myth or a reality, I'm sure you have your own reasons. Why don't you share your reasons for why you say it is a myth or a reality?
Well, for me, selling is an art because
Okay.
it is finally the person who is using his skills to sell the product, and also he is understanding the customer according to his needs, and after then he is showing the product. And
Okay.
for me, it is a learning thing, and because of this, selling is an art.
Okay. Anybody else wants to add something else here?
I feel selling is more of a more than art. It is more of a science because it involves like logical thinking. Like even if you sell any product to a customer, you have to think logically, like what is exactly the customer needs. Rather than a customer can want anything, like customer have multiple wants in today's time, but actually what is the customer need? So to find out the customer actual need, it's like it needs to have a logical thinking. Then only you
Correct.
have to find out his need and deliver accordingly.
Absolutely. So what you're saying, it is really true. So, this was a statement which was a bit confusing, or maybe, we thought that we will stick to one part of it. But I would say this is politically a correct statement. So selling is an art, yes, but it is not just an art. So selling is a mix. I would say it's an amalgamation of art and skill both. Now, why I say skill? Because selling is a science. There is a process. And whenever there is a process, there is science involved. And when you have a process to do something, there has to be adherence to the process to increase the probability of the outcome. So when you meet a potential customer, everybody wants to make that sale. But what's the reality? 100% conversion can never, ever happen. But you can increase the probability of you getting a sale out of every call that you go for is by following a process. And that's the beauty, or that's the importance of process adherence. Some people may be naturally gifted because they're good with their communication, or maybe they have a thinking of the brain that, they can simplify things. So explaining about technicalities of the product, it comes natural to them, right? Some people may they have to spend time to learn it. And that's why we say it's a skill also. So some could be naturally gifted, but that does not mean that others can't learn the skill of selling, because selling is a science, right? It's a process that you need to follow. There's a process adherence which is required. And everything and anything that we do in sales is a logic. And logic is all about science. So technically, selling is a mix of both art and skill. So it is not just an art, it is not just a skill, but it's a mix of both. Okay. Now, this is interesting. Only smooth talkers can be the best of the salespeople. Guys, any inputs on this? We're saying only smooth talkers can be the best of the salespeople. Okay, so I have 2 people telling me it's a myth. Yes, it's absolutely a myth, because had this been true, then it cannot be a skill, right? Skill is something that you can practice, and then master. So if only smooth talkers can be good salespeople, that means we're saying that extroverts are only good salespeople. It's absolutely not true. So there are so many introverts who are great salespeople, right? So you cannot say basis whether the person is an introvert or an extrovert and say they are good salespeople. Yes, it may help in the process of sales, because you may build that rapport very easily with customers, because it's a natural thing that comes to you. It may help you. It may enable you to become better in rapport building, or maybe, getting your customers buy-in. But that necessarily does not mean that you have to be an extrovert to become a great sales guy. Even introverts can master the skill by learning, sharpening their saw. So this is typically a myth. Okay, let's move to the next statement. Okay, now this is a bit tricky. When a customer raises an objection, one should follow the 3C model. Now, this was a model that we have always spoken in sales training. So what we say is that you try to convince the customer first. If the customer doesn't get convinced, you confuse the customer. If the customer still doesn't get confused and he's not buying your product, you corrupt the customer. So that's typically the right way of handling an objection. Now, do you think this is a myth or a reality? What does the forum say? Okay, I have 4 responses. Okay, people saying it's a myth, 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 myth. Okay. Anyone who wants to say this is a reality? Anybody who says that this is a reality? No. So 100% of the population agrees that it's a myth, and yes, indeed it is a myth. Now, my question, why do you think it's a myth? What is the reason that made you say that this is a myth?
Consumers are more educated today. So
Okay.
whenever there is an objection, it is better to report it to the upper team and actually discuss over it so that you can improve your product. Or can know the reason behind that objection. Convincing, confusing, and corrupting will help you in making that sales, but will reduce the lifetime value of that customer and can also lead you behind your competitor in future.
Fantastic.
So
okay.
this used to work earlier when consumers were not that educated, but it may not work today.
Absolutely bang on, Kshitij. This was a model that was actually taught in sales training earlier, primitive days. That if a customer comes to you, you convince him. If he doesn't get convinced, you confuse him so that he buys. And if he's not confused, you corrupt him to the extent that he does not even buy your product and he's not going to buy competition's product. So that's the hard approach that people would follow. But as you rightly mentioned, in today's world, it is about building a brand. You can't do that to a customer. You may end up doing it once, but the customer will never come back to you, right? So this is a myth. Whenever you get an objection from a customer, you should understand what is the reason for the objection, and then you try to handle it using the actual process of handling an objection. Anybody else wants to add what Kshitij mentioned, or they want to justify or rather put forth their reasons of saying why the statement is a myth? Anybody else? Because I had quite a few responses on the myth piece.
Himadri, you cannot confuse a person and convert him to a customer only for not only for the sake of the sales, a generic business.
Yeah.
So for that reason.
So what are you trying to say, Rohan?
Yeah, only for the sake of generating business out of a person, you cannot confuse. I mean, you cannot confuse a person, right?
Correct. You're absolutely right. So technically, we should not do this. But yes, what I'm trying to say is that this is a myth because this was a model that was taught earlier to salespeople how to handle objections, right? So this is what you're saying is absolutely correct. You cannot do that in the real space. Anybody else wants to add as to why this is a myth? Because I had quite a few people saying that this is a myth. Okay. So what we're saying is that whenever you get an objection, effective objection handling is the key to close a deal, because typically objection is the last stage before the deal closure, right? So convincing or trying to confuse or corrupting a customer in today's scenario does not work. You have to be very genuine about what you say to customers. So you need to address any objection that arises, because till the time you do not handle that objection, I repeat, till the time you do not address that objection, you do not handle that objection with a logical reasoning, the customer will not buy. So what most of the salespeople do is, because they don't know the right technique of handling an objection, they would try to evade from the question or the objection. And they would talk about all other things rather than the question or the objection the customer has raised. And they feel that they've handled the objection there. But psychologically, it is still there in the minds of the customers. And till the time you don't address that objection, trust me, the customer will not allow you to close the deal, right? So he will not allow you to proceed further till the time you don't handle that objection. So whenever you get an objection, you should not go on the front foot. Oh, sorry, you should not go on the back foot. In fact, you should come on the front foot and combat that or handle that with a logical explanation, because every adult understands logic. So when you handle an objection, what is more important is don't get emotional, don't get defensive, go on the front foot and tell the customer the logic. And the moment the customer gets the logic, his objection is handled. So that's why we're saying that this particular model or using this model was a myth. It's a primitive model that we were talking of. Okay, the next statement, it is always a good idea to focus on the customer instead of getting involved with the people who accompany the customer during the interaction. Now, this typically happens, and this is a very normal or a regular phenomena when you are selling something which is high ticket value, right? So when you're selling something expensive, it is very natural for a customer to get his friends or family to come and make that buying decision. So what we are saying, it is always a good idea to focus only on the customer instead of getting distracted with the people who accompany the customer during the interaction. So do you think this is a myth or a reality? What should you be doing? Guys, waiting for the responses, or you can just actually say it. Why do you feel it's a myth, or why do you feel it's a reality? Okay, so I've got one response. In fact, two. Raja says it's a reality. Rohan says it's a myth. Okay, Kshitij says it's a myth. Okay. Okay, guys. So I have one person. Okay, I've got two people who saying a reality. So let me go to the audience who says it's a reality. So can you tell me why do you feel it's a reality? That why should I only be focusing on the customer and not paying attention to the others accompanying the customer?
Hi, this is Ebenezer here.
Yeah.
See, end of the day, the customer is the one who's going to buy the product, not the person who's accompanying.
Correct.
Though the person who accompany, they might have a image like they are knowledgeable in the product. They'll try to portray that image in front of the customer. But our motto is not to damage the image of the person who accompany, but at the same time cater the expectation of the customer.
Correct. Okay. Anybody else wants to say why they're saying it's a reality?
Yeah, I mean, because the other people would influence, but they are not the buyer.
Okay.
So the buyer is the one who is going to buy. Decision lies onto him. And those who are influencer, I mean, they cannot be the center of attraction for us, or they cannot be the the people who are our main customer. So I think it's a reality. Yeah.
So I'll take it from there what Sarita mentioned. Okay. This is actually a myth. Okay. But I'll pick it from where Sarita mentioned about the fact of influencing people. Now let us understand this psychologically. Whenever you're buying something which is high ticket, the human nature is you would want to take your closed ones along with you when you go and buy, or when you're trying to take that buying decision. It could be someone in the immediate family. It could be someone who's within your friends and family who has knowledge about that product. And what most of the salespeople do, as people who mentioned that it's a reality, that they focus only on the customer without understanding the fact that a customer will not get any Tom, Dick, and Harry in the buying cycle, or will not involve any Tom, Dick, and Harry in the buying process. They would only get people whom they trust, whose opinion matters to them. And that's the reason, if I'm a salesperson, I'm just focusing on the customer and I'm trying to ignore the others because I know they are not my buyers, or I don't even treat them as potential buyers. When the customer approaches them or goes to them or asks them for their opinion, they will absolutely say a no. Not because they have anything against you personally as a salesperson, but psychologically or subconsciously, you've somewhere hurt their ego. Because end of day, when I'm walking inside a store or when I'm going into a buying process with a customer, I also want the same respect as the buyer should get. So typically a learning for every sales consultant is anyone and everyone who accompanies the buyer are your decision influencers, right? So the amount of time, effort, and attention that you give to the customer, you should be managing that with everyone. So there's something called a lighthouse gaze, right? So when you interact with a group, you speak to everyone in the group and not just speaking to the customer. Because when you're just interacting with the customer and you avoid the others and you don't even have eye contact, technically you are hurting their ego. And when this customer will turn back to them to seek their advice, they will say, nahi yaar, ye mat le, let's go to the other store and buy. And then all your effort, time, and energy spent is a waste. So whenever you have a customer who's accompanied with people, make sure that you understand that they are important in the buying process and you give utmost attention and time to all of them. Let's quickly move to the next statement. Okay. Now, this is pretty cliched. Okay. We're saying that you can be a great salesperson if you like meeting new people and interacting with them. Now, what does the forum say? Is this a myth or a reality? You can be a great salesperson if you like meeting new people and interacting with them. And this is typically an answer that you get in interviews, right? So when you ask people, why do you want to get into sales? This, I want to get into sales because I like meeting new people. I love meeting new people. So I've got one response which says it's a reality. Okay. Let me wait for the others for their responses. What do you think? This is a reality or a myth? Okay, I've got another. Okay, I've got two responses. Okay, Rohan says it's a myth. Raja says it's a reality. Okay. Anybody else? Sarita says it's a myth. Okay, let me ask people who say it's a reality. Why do you say it's a reality? That you can be a great salesperson if you like meeting new people and interacting with them.
Yeah, again, so why I think is like there are customers to whom we are creating a need actually. So
correct.
In that case, with the new people, with a bunch of new people every time, then we are putting our whatever the product or service they in mind. They may not be immediately buyer, but for us to be a what do you call our sales representative to someone who is in need.
Okay. Anybody else wants to add to this quotient or sorry, this factor of reality?
I would want to add one point that
yeah,
like sales is actually a skill and it can be learned better by practicing. And when you are meeting new people and interacting with them, then definitely you are interacting with them. It means that in the past when you interacted with them, you got some dopamine release or you felt happy. That is,
correct.
You were presenting yourself very well, you are selling yourself well, because of which you are doing it again and again. So it's just like a practice, and practice makes a person great. So in that way, I think that meeting new people and interacting with them can actually make a person a good salesperson.
Great. Much appreciated, Shithit, sharing this. Okay, so this is actually a myth. What you guys are saying is correct to an extent, because, if I genuinely like meeting new people, I can be a great salesperson because I like doing that. I like meeting new people on a regular basis. But this is definitely, I repeat, this is definitely not a qualifier to be a great salesperson. To be a great salesperson, it is much more and beyond just liking to meet new people or interacting with new people. In fact, the number of people that you interact with in a customer service environment is much higher compared to sales. And similarly, there are so many professions which involves meeting people all the time. So I'm not saying what you guys say, what you guys are saying is wrong. What I'm trying to say here is that this is definitely not a qualifier, right? There are a lot of professions, be it customer service, it could be logistics, it could be marketing, it could be so many other departments that involves meeting new people, meeting fresh faces all the time. So sales is much more and beyond meeting and interacting with new people. Sales is all about a science that you need to adhere to, a science that you need to follow, a process that you need to follow. So selling is not just something which comes out in random, that you meet a customer, you feel what you feel like saying, you have a perception the moment you look at the guy, and then you start pitching about your products or solutions. It's a process that you need to adhere. So sales is much more and beyond just meeting and liking to interact with more people or meet new people. Okay, so this is a myth. Now I have a time crunch, but still I would want to wind this up. I'm sure everybody likes eating Maggie, right? Yes, no, maybe at least give me some acknowledgements here. Okay, I get a thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Oh, yes. I get quite a few responses. I'm sure we all love eating Maggie, right? And Maggie's been one of our favorite foods. So I know it's 1:05, but can somebody quickly tell me a process of making a bowl of edible Maggie? Can somebody quickly tell me what is the process of making a Maggie? You can take your time, maybe 15, 20 seconds or 30 seconds, gather your thoughts and just tell me what is the process of making a Maggie. Anyone. And I would prefer, rather than typing it, if you can verbally say this. I need one volunteer. If anybody can volunteer, I'll be more than happy.
So you boil water, open the packet, and break Maggie into two halves. Put it in the bowl, in the pan where the boiling water is there. Put the masala. I mean, you cut the sachet and put the masala. Stir it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I mean, 2 minutes is a myth, I would say. Reality is it takes 5 minutes easily. Then it's the burner.
Okay. So that's the process. Everybody agrees, or somebody has a disconnect?
Agreed.
Who says agreed?
Vivek.
Vivek. Oh, Vivek says agreed. Okay. Now let me be a devil's advocate. So I've noted the process. Did you mention how much, what's the quantity of water that you need to put in?
No.
So what if I put half a liter of water? What happens then?
I mean, you'll have to actually, boil it for pretty more time.
Right. And that will land up making the Maggie not too tasteful, right? The normal taste that we have.
Yes.
Typically, do we break it into 2 or 4? I don't know. That's a question. How long do I boil it for? So what I'm trying to help you guys understand. Okay, so I have another person, Pavneet, who's put in a answer on the chat. I'll take that. Take a pan, pour 2 cups of water and let it boil. Add masala and Maggie together. Stir it till it gets cooked. So you're saying 2 cups of water. So what is the quantity of 1 cup? So the point that I'm trying to drive home, considering and keeping the time constraints in mind, that process is something which is foolproof. So the objective of a process is that it is so well laid out that even if a person who does not know how to make Maggie looks at all the logical steps and he lands up making a Maggie. So typically the process has to be so robust that the outcome every time that I follow the process would be the same. And it can be undertaken by a layman who's never done that. So importance of process adherence in sales is of paramount importance. What does it do? It gives you error-free execution. It will tell you step by step that what exactly needs to be done at every stage when you're meeting your customers or you're interacting with your customers. It will reduce the probability of potential errors that you can possibly make at every step if you follow the process. And of course, if I follow the process, to the T, higher chances of achieving the desired outcome. That's what process does. So typically, if I ensure 100% compliance to my sales process, the outcome or the probability of getting a sale is much higher compared to a random approach. And that's where process adherence and process excellence comes into play. So if you look at the best of the organizations, they have the best of the sales processes defined. Every sales guy knows what exactly needs to be done after what stage and when. The irony is people don't follow it. That's a different thing, right? But yes, for you to be successful, you need to adhere a process. Similarly, so what is the process? It is the language of 5W and 1H. And I'm sure theoretically we all have heard this 5W and 1H, right? So that's the difference between a salesperson and a sales consultant. The sales consultant does not operate out of myths. He follows a sales process, and every organization has a clear-cut, defined sales process. So the biggest differentiator between an ordinary salesperson and a great sales consultant is process adherence. And
Can
that
you have
is
the previous slide?
yeah, previous slide. Okay.
Can you have before this?
Yeah. So this is what helps you define a process. Who will do it? What needs to be done? When, where, why, and how. So that's why we say the language of 5W and 1H.
Yeah.
And that is what the differentiating factor between a salesperson and a sales consultant is. And at Juno, that is what we're trying to do. Our approach is to tell people that sales doesn't come random. There is a science. And unfortunately, people are not teaching that science. What we help you understand is that what is the science behind selling, what is the process, and how do you master it? You understand it theoretically, and with practice and our interventions, we will help you shape those skills. Because what we personally believe is that if you're not willing to learn, no one can help. And I'm sure you guys spending time on a Saturday afternoon, being a weekend, is an epitome of the fact that you're willing to learn. So if you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. And that's not my statement. That is something said by the master Zig Ziglar himself. So if you want to learn, nobody can stop you. But yes, you should know where to go, the right place, and what are the right process to learn. So this brings me to the end of the session. Again, I want to reiterate one of very exciting topics coming next week, which is career pitfalls, which few people talk about. So be a part of this session next Saturday. Block your calendars right now, maybe set a reminder. So Deepak would be addressing the forum and talking about career pitfalls, which normally people miss out on at earlier stages in their career. And what are the things that you should not be doing or should not be imbibing in yourself as bad practices, which could be fatal in the long run. So be part of that session. And I know I have taken 10 minutes more apart from the scheduled time. I know it's a weekend, but still, before we wind up, I would throw the forum for an open house. Any questions you guys have, anything that you want to ask, anything that you want to know, please feel free to ask.
Sir, that question regarding meeting new people is not a reality. But when you see it, because in my case, I'm saying like inhibition of not meeting the new people and not calling them, then I won't be able to sell my product. So
correct. So yes, you will have to meet new people, right? Yes.
So, but it's a part of sales process, right?
Correct. Yes. Prospecting, lead generation is also part of sales. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions anybody has? So, I'm putting the links on the chat box. You can always follow us on LinkedIn, on Insta, LinkedIn page. You can always connect to us at hello@Juno School. You can ping us there. You can actually, get connected with us. Any questions you have, any doubts you have. Our objective at Juno, again, to reiterate, is to add value to people who want to build serious careers in sales and guide them to make them understand that what is good and what is not so great to be followed.
Right? I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, will you tell me about the SAVE? You have discussed about solution, access, value. Sir, is the value mean value to a person or?
Okay. Good, Rahul, that you asked me that question. So value is about creating the value of the solution or the product that you're selling. So to answer that quickly, earlier world, if you talk about the 4P model, it was all about product, place, price, promotion. So we would talk about price more, right? So we would say customer will make a decision basis the price of the product. Ye महंगा hai, ye सस्ता hai, ye वाला ले ले. Today it is all about building value. If you can show value in your product or solution, nothing is expensive for a customer. Because today's world, anything and everything that you can think of, it can get financed, provided the customer wants to buy. To give you an example, even a kid who's just started his career, right, also flaunts an iPhone which is worth more than 1 lakh because he wants to buy it. He sees value in owning that iPhone so he can take it on EMIs. Correct? So what we're saying, today salespeople should not be thinking of price. If they can show value around the product, around the solution, the customer will buy it. Simple. Either he will do a down payment, either he will get it financed. But what we need to do is make him understand that there is a value around what he's buying. So he should typically see it as an investment rather than a cost. So since you asked me that question, Rahul, to give you more insights, though at Juno School, we talk about the same ideology and our programs are all revolving around this. You can always go and Google this out. This is actually a research that was done and it was printed in the HBR. So solution access value education is a model which is the evolved version of the 4P model. I hope I could answer that question, Rahul.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else has any other question? I know I've held you back 15 minutes prior to the stipulated time, but yes, at times, we tend to go overboard when the session is interesting and people are asking a lot many questions. Anything anybody else wants to ask before we sign off?
One last question from my side.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, now we have seen because what I want to discuss, and you please guide because in terms of what is that. So like we have new products coming to the market, new products, new services. Now the company sales and marketing guys.
Ahmed, I'm losing out on your voice. Can you just repeat the last bit that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm experiencing it like we are in the market, new products and services are coming over a period of time, and the companies are hiring marketing and sales guys. Now, why agencies or there are platforms wherein whenever I want to launch a product, so for scaling up, it is taking time for me, right? From having 900 days, around 90 days and plus time. 90 days and plus time, I'm saying. So why there are some the platforms or something like that in B2B space in particularly, wherein within we can shorten this time actually.
Okay, so let me understand your question better. So what you're saying is that you've launched a new product, correct? And typically in a B2B space, you want to create visibility of that product to your customers, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And you're asking that, is there any other platform? Is there a platform wherein we can leverage that platform to do this? Is that your question?
It's a platform wherein this scaling up and knowledge of the products gets shortened actually for the right decision makers.
Okay, so are you asking me that how can I make my product presentation more impactful so within less time I can give the complete information? Is that your question?
Yeah, but to the right perspective,
okay, so to the right decision makers, right?
Yes.
Okay, so so let me help you understand, or let me give it an attempt to answer this question right away. Though this is a long process to understand what is a gatekeeper, decision maker, decision influencer, because there are a lot of people involved in a B2B buying per se. Now, when you meet a customer for the first time, when you speak to them, you get to know whether that person is a decision maker. And the objective is to connect to the decision maker at the least possible time so that you don't spend time, hopping around different buckets. But there are times you will have to encounter a gatekeeper. And the moment you meet a person and you know that this person will not be the decision maker, and at times this person says that I am speaking to you, but I'll have to seek an approval from my boss, or maybe he's the one who's going to take the final decision. The moment a signal like this comes to you, as a smart sales consultant, you should always encourage a joint meeting so that sooner you approach, you get an access to the decision maker faster and the lead time reduces. That's one. Second, this is very natural to happen at the negotiation. So when we talk about negotiation skills, you've spoken to a person, he's all set, he is projected all this while that he's the decision maker. But when you give him the last and the best proposal, he introduces a mystery man. Now, this is a negotiating tool from the customer's end. Now, what is this mystery man? The mystery man is typically the boss or the supervisor. It may not be true, but he strategically introduces, because the moment he feels, the moment he says this, you will reduce your price further, or you would add more freebies to the package. Correct? So To avoid such situations, try to have a joint meeting with all the stakeholders who would be involved in the buying process. So for example, if you're selling an automation solution, it would be the IT team, it would be the purchase, it would be the finance maybe, right? So try to get all the decision makers together sooner, the better, because then your lead time will reduce and one effort you can handle all their questions. Answers your question, Ahmed, though, because this is a long, this would actually need a lot of in-depth discussion around a lot of tools and techniques, but I hope I could do justice to your question, whatever time I have right now.
No.
Great. Thank you so much. And any other question, guys, you have before I sign off, or rather we close the learning series for the week today? No? Great. So let's connect next Saturday, and I'm sure that you guys would be registering right away. So you can always park lot, or rather block your calendars for next Saturday session. And trust me, it's going to be a great session because nobody talks about career pitfalls. People always talk about what you should be doing, but this session is going to be all about what you should avoid at early stages in your career. Thank you so much for joining, and see you next week.